Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello. We're getting started in a minute. I'm Nita, new to the roadmap staff, new-ish to the roadmap staff. Pleasure to Zoom meet everybody. How's everyone doing?
We're all good. How are you?
Hanging in, hanging in. Where's everybody located?
I'm in Saudi Arabia.
Oh, what time is it there?
It's 2 a.m.
Oh, wow. Okay. Dedication.
I don't know, right?
With the quarantine, it's like I'm sleeping all day and I'm waking up late. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're rested.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Elizabeth?
I'm in LA.
Oh, okay. Me too.
Toronto.
Hi from Brazil,
Oh.
Toronto. Paulo. 4. Okay. Oh, it's been a day already.
It snowed yesterday.
It snowed, you said?
Yesterday.
Really? Is that unusual?
Yes. Well, the whole Northeast. This like
Huh?
all New England and New York. Got,
Oh, wow.
It's been unusually cold and snowy.
Yeah. Well, my daughter was like, she didn't say it snowed yesterday, but she's in New Jersey right now, so that doesn't apply. So,
But
okay.
you know, a pandemic, murder hornets, snow.
Why not snow? It makes sense. For right now anyway. So, but luckily they've rolled out phase 1 of reopening California at least.
California.
Yeah. So hopefully people will adhere to the limitations and not set us back, because I love my apartment, but I'm super sick of it. I would like to go outside because I can. So we'll see how it goes. Excuse me. Just make sure I have any messages from Audrey. Just running a bit late, I guess. This is, where'd I go? What do I do with the schedule? Pretty sure this is the session for Audrey Knox, right? I didn't come into the wrong one, did I?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, because you know, never can tell with me today anyway. Just go.
And we have fewer squares than yesterday.
Oh, okay. Maybe people will log in later, or maybe they got their fill yesterday.
Maybe they're not ready to pitch.
That's also a possibility.
But now we can play Hollywood Squares.
Oh, we can. Arthur's in the center square. That would be super fun right now, though, like seriously. It's like watching that with my mom.
Elizabeth, I think I've seen your interview. You have a twin, right?
I do, yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so I recognize the right person. So that's really cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
What about everyone here? Like, what films do you have nominated, or what are your films about?
You mean
The
the
ones that
one
were nominated?
that for new filmmakers?
Yeah.
Yeah. We had a music video, a short film / music video.
I think I've seen it. I was in the same. That was the one in June, right?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, I was there. The Canadian program, right? I was there because my film was considered like Canadian Saudi. So.
Oh.
Yeah. So I was in the Canadian program.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mine was Hair, if you remember. That it's the one about the hairy woman.
Yes. Yes.
Like yeah.
Yes. I do remember that.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
That's
when
cool.
you said Saudi, I didn't, but when you said Saudi Canadian and that
Yeah.
it played then, that's when it hit me that I remember that.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So, well, congratulations for having your film nominated. Everyone, I guess. Too bad this never took place, the awards. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. It was, and it was just like, I remember when things started to really go crazy,
Mhm.
you know, when we heard that like Tom Hanks had it in Australia and everything. And we were thinking, oh, is it going to happen? Is it going to happen? Because things started getting canceled and shutting down. And then every day I was checking, is it happening? Is it happening? And then of course we got the notice that it wasn't happening.
Aw.
Yeah, no, my imposter syndrome flared right up when that came out. I was like, oh man, nothing good can happen, can it? Oh, you know, like I couldn't believe it. Maha, wait, what was the name of your film?
Hair, the story of grass.
Hair,
Were
the
you
story
thinking-
of
Hair,
Grass.
the story of grass. Let me just write it down.
Got it.
Yeah. What about your film?
Mine is American Bistro, and it's a feature, and I don't know, you can hear my imposter syndrome flaring up right now. For some reason, I'm unable to say it out loud to you directly. But yeah, it's a feature, and I was really looking forward to Best Of.
Aw.
I mean, who knows? They might still do it, right?
Yes, they said they haven't given up on having it. Maybe in the
I thought it got canceled, not delayed.
well, they said
Oh, no,
I think they said like not postponed to a particular date, but not necessarily canceled.
Okay. Well,
They
that's
kind of left
great.
it up in the air.
Okay, because I was like feeling bad because this year like my work weren't giving me any days off to go, and I had another film with the New Filmmakers LA in December, but I couldn't go. So I was so bummed, and I was afraid of missing this one. So when it got delayed, canceled, I'm like, oh, maybe.
Well, they said they wouldn't release the winners
Okay.
because we're all nominated, right? But they
Yes.
wouldn't release the winners until they actually have some kind of ceremony. So
Okay. So there's hopes of them arranging it sometime, maybe. Yeah.
yeah.
So.
When we can fly on airplanes again.
Okay, sorry guys for the delay. I just talked to Audrey and she'll be popping on in just about a minute.
We've been chatting. It's okay.
So what about everyone else, like who has a film? Maybe tell us more about your films that were nominated, or the name of the film.
Oh, it looks like Audrey's on.
Yep.
Hi. Okay.
Zoom Mother's Day call.
Oh.
Wow.
Oh, okay. There she is.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is, Audrey, you're gonna do a quick introduction of yourself, and then you can go into the lecture. And then after the lecture, if anybody wants to volunteer to pitch, they can. Just, I think there's a raise your hand function or something like that. I don't know. Just toss something in the chat box or just say, hey, I'll go. And then you can go and then you can do your pitch.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to get started. And just to make sure I'm on the same page, do you want me to talk for like 10, 15 minutes longer, shorter?
Yeah, like 15 minutes is good.
Excellent. Okay, great. So my name is Audrey Knox. I'm a manager at Cartel Entertainment. It's a literary management and production company. We represent a few hundred writers in the TV and feature space, a few directors as well. Not so much talent. We mostly focus on the lit side of things. We've got about 15 managers at the company, offices in London and studios up in Winnipeg, Canada. So we do a lot of production. Half of our company does movies of the week for Hallmark, Lifetime, things like that. And the other half of our company, Cartel Entertainment, mostly focuses on representation, getting writers staffed on TV shows. developing our own original projects, either with writers or in a production capacity as well. That sometimes means packaging IP that we find up with either our clients or clients at other different companies, or shepherding projects from the people we represent in through to production and getting them sold. So a lot of what I do, again, is staffing and getting writers work on shows, but it is fun to help them with their original projects. I generally focus on writers in the comedy space just because it's what I prefer to watch and read, but I do also tend to represent writers in comedy and drama. So I'm excited to kind of get into talking with all of you about pitching best practices. And so generally, there are two main goals when you are pitching your idea. And one is, of course, to sell the merit of the idea itself. You want everyone to be on board, be clear as to what the story is, why it needs to be told, who these characters are, and what the hook of the world and the premise are. But you also really are pitching yourself in this as well. So whether you're out on a general meeting, in a potential staffing meeting, in a pitch where you are trying to focus more on the merits of your product, you still want to make sure that you as the writer are the person that's being primarily sold, because ideas are great, but they're also, I don't want to say a dime a dozen, because you don't necessarily come on a great idea that's a sellable show all the time. But you can generally, if you have enough experienced writers in a room, come up with some good sellable content. It's why you see writer producers like Greg Berlanti and Mike Schur selling tons of shows all of the time, because once you have the experience and the know-how and the credibility, it's easy to get someone to say yes to your idea. So when you're on the outside breaking in as a new writer, your idea is important, but it's not as important as highlighting why you're the best person to tell this. So you want to make sure that your pitch is always imbued with a lot of, this is what I bring to the table in terms of experience. This is why I'll be the best person to tell this story. And then on top of that, this is why this story needs to be told right now. People need to hear it in this moment. It's very urgent. And on top of that, I am urgently the person who needs to be conveying this. So that's why we recommend, and this is true for what we tell our clients when we're getting ready for big pitches that are happening to producers or to studios or directly to networks that will last maybe like 30 minutes to an hour with questions. And it's true when I'm talking to writers who are just getting started and formulating those 8-minute pitches. You want to make sure that you start off by hooking the listener or viewer into you and who you are, what your qualifications are, and what your personal story is. So really being able to hone in on what makes your worldview unique is going to be a part of the pitch that really hooks your viewer into wanting to hear more and care about your story. Because again, even if your story is a great idea, the really big question on everyone's mind is like, why should I listen to you? And that'll also help you if you come up with a story that maybe is something that's also already kind of out there, or is a traditional take on, let's say, a romantic comedy or a procedural, but you're able to give it a little bit of a twist. Being able to highlight what your background is and the way your life experience has enabled you to tell this version of what you're pitching in a very unique way is why you want to start off with just a little bit about who you are in that hook. Another really great reason to start your pitch off with exactly who you are is because you want to humanize yourself in the eyes of the person who's listening to you. If they're not just judging an idea, but they're also listening to a human being with a story and a life and perspective on the world that maybe your listener doesn't have, they're all of a sudden going to be more receptive to the other things that you want to talk about, like your ideas and the genre you want to explore and the characters you want to get into. So once you've talked about who you are and why they should listen to this pitch from you, and you don't need to phrase it in a way that's like, this is why you should listen to what I have to say. You want to make sure that you're organically presenting your story in a way that hooks the audience. So a couple of years ago, when I was working in this one industry, this event happened to me that totally changed the way I saw the role of family in my life. Just kind of, and you would make it a little more specific to you, but being able to hone in on that background will allow you to have a lot of advantage in terms of framing your story within your perspective. So once you have that, you want to move into the hook and the premise of what the person is actually buying here. And that might be a what if question, like what if a guy was never allowed to tell a lie for 24 hours? Or what if aliens came down to Earth and they wanted to take over a family? Or just making sure that that premise, the initial sellable movie poster, trailer ad for the show is the next part that you directly move into, so that we know as listeners what it exactly is that we're buying here. So what are we, what's the poster, what's the hook, what's the catch, what makes your audience sit on the edge of their seat and go, oh, okay, this is what I'm here for. And once you can succinctly say that idea, then you want to move into the characters. Ideally, of course, the main character, because that person is the person through whose eyes we're going to be seeing the rest of the story. So before you get into their background and everything, make sure you first start with following a little bit of the broader strokes of storytelling in general. So what kind of world is our character living in? Why are they dissatisfied? What are they searching for? What's their goal and their outset? And then what is that event or inciting incident or call to action that happens to them that starts propelling them into the journey of the show? And once you do that, you can take us into the other characters who are also going to be giving a lot of tension and plot lines, and you can tell us about their stories and backgrounds and how those characters will come into conflict. You want to also set up what the promise of every episode is going to be. And through doing that, you will be walking us through the broad strokes of your pilot episode. If you're pitching a feature, you're walking us through the broad strokes of just your feature story in general. So through that, we want to see like what happens in the first act, what happens in the second act, how is it all concluded? And again, general broad strokes. We don't need to see like really funny lines of dialogue or every specific scene and logical point, just what generally happens and how it's all kind of tied up at the end. And when you're doing that, you also want to touch on the elements of the story that are going to be the thing that sells it in the viewer's mind. So if you're pitching a mystery, you want to show us how in the broad strokes of the pilot story, your detective runs into problems when they're dealing with other people. Or if you're pitching a fantasy feature, you want to, in very broad strokes, tell us like what are the big set pieces and the monsters they have to deal with, what are the sidekicks that are coming along for the journey, and how does the resolution tie up the emotional arc of our main character. So once you give us the broad strokes of the story, and again, for a feature, that will take up more of a bulk of your pitch than for a TV show, which you'll want to start with the pilot and then go into maybe some other episode ideas for the first season, broad strokes for where the second and third seasons will take us, and then what the promise is for the rest of the show. And on top of that, if you have time, it would be a great opportunity to tie in a little bit of the thematic elements, the big picture reasons that viewers will want to watch this, the tone of the various scenes, how much of it will be humor, how much of it will be action, what kinds of places we are going to in terms of emotionally and in terms of the scope of the project. And then you'll want to tie it up. And the end of your pitch really needs to focus in on what I mentioned earlier about this being urgent. Because not only do you want to convince the people you're listening to that you are telling a story that will be fun and entertaining and maybe suspenseful, but you also want them to buy your story right now. And frame your conclusion in a way where like, this cannot wait. This needs to be told in this moment for these reasons, because of this current context in the world and this current national psyche or current events, and whatever that can be the framework for it, being able to see what emotionally or literally about this project will hook into viewers and touch on something that they're all kind of feeling right now, will be a way to wrap your pitch up by telling your listener that they cannot wait on this. Let me pull up my notes and see if I forgot anything. But I'll be happy to also answer any questions if anything I've touched on so far hasn't, or like does make sense, but maybe there's some sort of disconnect or jarring or anything that hasn't come across. Feel free to raise your hand and I can call on you. Yes. Let me see
Everybody.
Yes, great. Let's do Maha. Can you unmute yourself, and how do I do that?
Okay, hi. So I was wondering about like relevance, because I have a feature that I'm working on right now, and it's between Saudi Arabia and the US. And I'm sometimes thinking about like, how relevant is my project being based in Saudi Arabia? And it's a story of like someone who goes to the US. I mean, how relevant should I make it to an American audience, for example, or a European audience? That's always on my mind whenever I'm sending my feature script to labs in Europe and in Asia and the US. So if you can just talk a little bit about that, please.
Absolutely, I'd love to. When we're talking about relevance, it doesn't always have to be literally, specifically, topically relevant. It can also touch on, in this time of disconnect, we always feel like outsiders, and this is a story of being an outsider. Or in an era where there's so much like xenophobic rhetoric going on in the news, this story about a person in a different country and culture will maybe be able to bridge that gap while also showing them going on a journey that feels relatable. So there's a way to pitch any story as relevant. It's just a matter of highlighting that relevance. I know there might be an instinct there, whether it's a piece that is in a foreign setting or is in a scientific fiction future. Like, it might seem totally removed from our lives, but at the end of the day, there's a human element to storytelling as a whole that makes the need for relevance more important than ever. And you can just pinpoint and maybe target your audience specifically. Like, there might be some things an audience won't identify with the same way your European audience has, which is an excellent reason to tailor your pitch for those labs or whoever you're bringing it to. But you do want to make sure that it is pitched as being relevant and important to your audience, no matter who your audience is. And you might want to tweak how you phrase it a little bit, but it should still always be there.
Thanks.
Yes, Elizabeth, and then Fred. Can you unmute yourself?
Did I do it? I think I did.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Super helpful.
Of course.
Your time. So I'm an actor, and I work with a bunch of different writers, and I write as well. Sometimes for a specific project, if I have a lead writer on it who isn't me, the story is always generated by me for my projects, and they usually pertain to me. But I feel like in the room, it's usually the writer who is sharing their story. I guess I'm wondering, at what point is it appropriate for me to chime in, since it's not at that point really my ball game or whatever? And should I like say something at the beginning, or just not speak up, or maybe do I sort of script something for them to share about me?
You want to make sure that when you're pitching with a writer, or if you're pitching with a co-writer or a director, or in any sort of collaborative sense, that there is a shared sort of script, and each of you can go back and forth and bring forward the different parts of the story that are relevant. It doesn't need to be like a rehearsed line for line aspect of it. It could just be like, I'll talk about the characters, you talk about the plot, I'll talk about future episodes. But it is helpful to, from the beginning, highlight each of your backgrounds and things that brought you into the story. So highlighting your experiences and your worldview and how this was brought into all of this. And then your writer can say, and because of my experiences and background and worldview, these elements appealed to me in this way. You can pitch how your collaboration will enhance the story, and it comes from the view.
Thank you. It's very helpful.
Fred, and then
this may be a weird question, but to paraphrase something that you said earlier, you know, this story my story has to be told right now, and I'm the best person to tell it. How do you make that come across without sounding like an ass?
You don't want to worry about, I understand the fear. You don't want to worry about sounding like an ass, because generally what I've seen is that writers err too much on the side of being timid and modest and not being salesmen. And you want to really be selling yourself. So don't feel like you need to hold back, because generally your instinct is going to want to be a little more modest than probably you should. However, understand that you don't want to be like that Hollywood, you know, person blowing smoke up the ass of whoever's listening. So that's why you really want to root the why I'm the best person in explaining your background, your worldview, and where your unique personal element is pulled into the story, rather than just your ability to craft dialogue or figure out a plot. You want to make sure that the why me is it has to do with the subject matter, not just the delivery. And one way to, I think, balance the being proud and selling your work with being modest, because that is a big fear that a lot of writers have, is try to think of when you're telling the story itself, I mean, you're doing the actual pitch, or even when you're talking about yourself. Like, imagine, don't do it in third person, but imagine you are talking about someone else or someone else's story, or a movie that you saw and really loved, and you're just explaining it to friends or family, telling them like why they should watch it. That way your real excitement for it can come through. And when it's a genuine excitement to tell the story, not just a used car salesman convincing someone to buy into it, it can feel confident without feeling like you're being a egomaniacal jerk.
Okay, cool, thanks.
And let's do Arthur. Can you
Hey, Audrey, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so what if what makes you special is something that might get in your way? What I mean by that is, I'll just use an example. So a very good friend of mine, Nickel Fellow, DGA Award, et cetera, accomplished person, had a feature coming out about a pedophiliac relationship just before Me Too. And had large producers and some A-listers and B-listers attached. Project is killed. So what I mean is there ever a moment, and she had a very good justification, you know, worldview type thing. She actually had all that, everything that you've described, perfect for her, you know. But is there ever sort of a moment where you should read the room, societally speaking, and you know, worry about like pick your battles? I don't know how to. You get what I mean, I think. Right?
Absolutely, I get what you mean. And I do think you want to read the room, socially speaking. And sometimes things just come up, and whether it's changes in what's socially acceptable or like changes in what is a topic that people are comfortable discussing, or even if it's like someone more famous than you also has a similar idea. There's so many different reasons a project that's on those later stages of development can fall and not happen and get canceled through no fault of your or the writer's own. In the initial pitching stages of it, if you are uncomfortable saying like this worldview that you have or this background of yours, if you're like, I'm a really like strong proponent of white supremacy and the KKK, like maybe you should think about not writing that at all and find a different element of your past or stories, or like highlight the recovery aspect of it and like, oh, this is what I'm doing to be different now. That way you can make sure that you're not getting in your own way. And absolutely, you don't want to be chasing the market in terms of trying to find and promote stories just because you think they're sellable in that moment. But you do want to think about like, yes, maybe this isn't the time to write a political drama about like a president's mistress being sexually assaulted. Like that just wouldn't work. And it worked in like 2006 when Scandal came out, but it wouldn't work today. And that sucks that you have to like constantly be pivoting because the world changes. But it is something that you should be like cognizant about, and absolutely read the room in terms of what society is willing to accept.
Awesome, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? You can unmute yourself or, okay, Paolo.
Yes. How do you think is a way to end a pitch with true impact? Things that cause a real sensation. Oh man, I wish I had like examples, but I don't have a lot of good examples of real of pitches that have gotten sold, like what they were saying in the room to end it. But I think the best way to end your pitch with impact is, again, to call back to the why and the about, and show how the characters and the world you've just pitched really sell the concept itself, and leave your listeners with a final statement that ties everything together. When you tie everything together, if you're pitching a comedy, it should be comedic. If you're pitching a drama, it should be impactful. It should feel like a selling point that will be a way that can sum up the significance of your project and allow the people you're pitching to sell it internally. So if you can, in a few short phrases or one sentence, say like, this is a this and this will hit here and here, that's exactly what will stick in their heads to take back to their, you know, VPs and marketing teams and everyone else at the company. So if you can end your pitch on a big kind of summary for all of it, that's what's going to be more impactful than like a clever quote or a funny anecdote or statistic. You want to like hammer home exactly what your project is. And I wish I had examples, but I do not.
Anybody else got a question? No? Sure? Okay. So anybody want to volunteer to pitch something? No?
It's not like scary.
I'll do it.
It doesn't have
I'll
to
do
be.
Okay. Go
Okay,
ahead.
thanks, Arthur.
Okay. So, Jesus, it's like I didn't hear anything that you just said. It's like it's all gone now.
So start with
okay,
you.
Let's start with me. So, so in this instance, I would start out by justifying why I'm here to talk to you and who I am, right? Humanize.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I'm an independent filmmaker. I've been making movies in my backyard since I was 13. One of the movies that I made in my backyard actually got distributed somehow, and that's what led me to then get something with Fox, which led me to make another movie. And and I've just been kind of pulling up my bootstraps with a lot of help from everybody else ever since. And so but I still feel a little bit like I'm, let's say in Hollywood, a little bit of an unknown, and the story of a nobody climbing up is always something that's really appealed to me. And even now, as crazy as it sounds, it still feels like that's a story that's not properly told. I would say maybe Extras is the one time when that story has been told, but even then, Extras is so short-lived and doesn't deal with Hollywood. That crushing desperation, that story of somebody coming up is not present in the Hollywood story, really, except for the first act of a lot of great musicals. So I'm pitching Nobody. It's called Nobody, and it's a feature or TV show or both, you know, about a girl who is a nobody and gives herself 30 days to make it in Hollywood or quit forever. And along the way, she does just about every fuck up that she can. She's completely subconsciously in her own way. It's you know, she's somebody who is always you know, hijinks ensue essentially. And I mean, yeah, oh boy, now I've forgotten the rest of what you told me to do.
Okay, so maybe talk about the broad stroke, or well, sorry, let's get into the characters a little bit. So who's she? Who are the other characters, the main players in the story? And from there, we can go into the broad strokes of the actual plot. So tell me more about her. In a way, hopefully, that can like create some empathy and show us why we want to listen or eventually watch this story.
Okay, so her real name is Abigail, but she goes by Sam Sweet as her screen name, and she is a person who, wow, this is very useful.
Nice, yes.
Yeah, oh my God. Well, she definitely is someone who, now you wouldn't hit up her backstory first, would you?
You can give a little bit of it. Yeah, if that will give us context and help, absolutely. I just want to make sure that most of the pitch is on what happens in the movie, with not all of it being in the backstory, but her backstory is super important. Yeah.
Okay. So we don't discover this at first, but she is a sort of ex-Jehovah's Witness. She moved out of her family home at a young age to try and make it in Hollywood, and she's somebody who's just she's rubbing two pennies together any chance she can get. She is one of those people who simultaneously desperately wants to succeed while also seems to always be in her own way, because she's like a dog chasing a car. She doesn't know what she's going to do if she ever actually gets there, and a lot of the time her own you know, ooh, yeah, it's very hard to make this sound like enjoyable. Like when you write it, it's like, when you write it, it's like, yeah, duh, but then you have to say it out loud and then you're like, oh man, this sounds just like a floundering sort of.
Yeah. Well, maybe there's
so,
like something in her attitude or why she wants to succeed, or again, like the people around her that feels more like relatable or engaging. You can point out what parts of her experience will be fun for us to watch. Obviously, a lot of them will be painful because the journey is painful, but what elements of, is it like her sense of hope? Is it her creativity? What pulls us in?
It's okay, so thank you for that. It's absolutely her sense of hope. The story is about her wondering, she's a person who's been at it for so long that she doesn't even remember why she started in the first place. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, where you have a dream as a child, you get in there, and then as it doesn't pan out the way you thought, or as it doesn't feel the way that you imagined, your disenchantment kind of leads you to wonder why you came here in the first place, why you even wanted this dream at all. And if you give up on that dream, are you giving up on a really key part of yourself that is a foundational basis for who you thought you were? And so that's the thing. It's a story of self-discovery where she finally forces herself to really give it her all, but in doing so comes in contact with so many things that she finds disagreeable, or so many things that she you know, either she discovers that she can't hack it, or she doesn't like what she's seeing in Hollywood, you know. And I mean, the characters, she's a very lonely person, so the characters in there are just a lot of you know, her roommates first of all, but she's a very, very combative relationship with her roommate Kia, who is constantly stealing her clothes and never cleaning her side of the room. and always leaving plates of food under the bed, and one of those kinds of people. Always leaving her makeup on the makeup towel and never actually doing any laundry, and she she has she's an extra, so she has her usual people that she sees on set, but all of which are varying degrees of I don't know if you've ever met any extras, but extra people, the type of folks who are extras.
I did background acting in
Yeah.
college. I definitely know the type. But what kinds of people are they?
They're people who justify their place in the world. They're people who will say, oh yeah, well, I make more money being an extra anyway. Why would I try to, get on up in life, or why would I? And that's the thing. There's a lot of justification of people staying stuck in their status, staying stuck where they are in their stratosphere. The really most prominent character that she meets at one point is Randy, who is a washed-up producer who ends up being they hit it off quite well because they both have a sort of disdain / nostalgic love for what they thought Hollywood would be and what Hollywood has turned out to be. And their relationship sours later, but eventually I don't even know. I mean, this is tough. You just get straight into the story, huh? Oh, hello?
Sorry about that. My internet cut out. Can you repeat the last sentence that you said?
Yeah, no problem. I know I said, so you really got to get into the story here. I really shouldn't have picked this plot. I really should.
Yeah, the
man.
story would be the next thing to kind of get into.
Yeah, so then I hope this is useful to everyone else. Don't do it, I did. So she.
You're brave for going first, so you get points for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically she. Oh, sorry, Maha.
Oh no, I wanted to comment, but I'll let you finish first. Comment on your pitch. When you said that she was an ex-Jehovah's Witness, that nailed it for me. I wish you could talk more about it, because I felt like there was a journey of transformation for her to be to shift from being someone who's preaching Christianity and then moving on to wanting to make it into Hollywood. That's very interesting to me. Maybe because I come from an Islamic country, and then my protagonist is the same way, but I felt like the journey of transformation was something that you could have focused more on in your pitch. When you started mentioning all the people, I felt like, how do these people inform her as a character for us, instead of just talking about all these details about the people? I kind of got lost. So yeah.
Okay. So then I guess Abigail is a person who's running away from who she wishes that she weren't. She wants to remake herself into someone new, which hence the name change, hence moving to Hollywood, and hence doing the thing that is the absolute opposite of what somebody who's Jehovah's Witness would want you to do, which is to join the hedonistic world of Hollywood. Which is not necessarily a hedonistic world, but their view is that, so she wished to go and adventure and become more than what it seemed like she was going to be, and it seems like now she's not able to. Along the way, like I said, she meets she lives with her roommates, many of which she has a very poor relationship with. But the reason why she has such a poor relationship with so many people is because she exudes this self-hatred of herself constantly that gets in the way, and of course they have their own issues as well. A big theme is that a lot of people that she meets are unable to listen to her, but she can't listen. She's very bad at paying attention or listening to anybody else in her life. And so anyways, eventually she goes to a new acting class after doing everything that she can think of to try to make it in that 30 days. So she gets new headshots, auditions for a bunch of stuff, emails everybody, BCCs 1,000 people that she got the emails off of IMDb Pro, and then ends up hearing about a charity party. And this is where she goes to a charity party, maxes out her credit card to go to this charity party, meets Randy, and then Randy and her, basically Randy, predates her, and tries to molest her at his apartment, and then she accidentally runs away and gets hit by a car. By this point, she's already been in a coma for 2 weeks. She's lost she lost the bet to herself, and she's been kicked out of her apartment. So she returns to her Jehovah's Witness family and tries to figure out why she wanted to be in Hollywood at all, and why she wants to go to all these auditions and have just generally a bad life for this dream that has never materialized. It doesn't even seem to be real, because when she meets people who are successful, they don't seem to be happy either. And eventually she finds that the thing that she liked was always the art itself and the ability to create. And she, puts on her big girl pants and goes back to Hollywood and just goes to another audition, just like the beginning of the movie. But this time she has a different perspective on it. And that's it. And I don't know why it took me so long to get there. Yeah.
That was
Audrey?
great. You don't need to end with, and that's it. I don't know why it took me so long. You could end with something more like, and that is the story of how someone on a path found their roots, or find a way to end it on a little more of a, again, summation for what you talked about and how all of us will be able to identify with the journey.
Okay, that's actually way more useful than, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to end with confidence too.
Okay, well, we're going to, did you have a question or were you volunteering to pitch? Is it Adria?
I was just doing like a Olympic stamp
okay.
at the end. That's how you should end.
Okay.
Yes, enthusiasm.
Ta-da!
And ta-da. Don't say ta-da.
Yeah, don't say that.
Okay,
And
Astrid has volunteered to pitch next. Are you
Can you
trying to?
unmute yourself?
There you go.
Can you hear me? Yes? Sorry. Hi, so I am Astrid. I am in Mexico City right now. I am from Mexico. So I'm here. I studied in Australia, and I did, my graduate film was a film about something that happened to me, but not. So I went to study film directing in Australia. Being there, realized women in Mexico have no human rights, and that I actually had been oppressed all of my life, even though I thought I wasn't. And realized a friend of mine was a victim of feminicide, something that happens very often in Mexico. 10 women are murdered every day. So I did research for 2 years and did a short film about the feminicides in the state of Mexico, where I am originally from. So now I came back to Mexico. I'm writing my first feature, and it's about what happened to my friend. So I'm writing exactly like this time the story that happened, which is my friend was dating my cousin, which now I realize my cousin is intersex. So I've been doing research for a year about the intersex community in Mexico. My cousin doesn't identify as intersex anymore. She has had her own conflict. Anyway, it's not a exact copy paste. I've like readapted the story more about what I wanted to do with the story, which was I made, We Vanish is the name of my film, the short film. I was very angry when I made it, I guess. And it talks more about the systematic oppression because women don't get justice in Mexico. So in this case, I wanted to talk more about what it means to be a woman in Mexico, why that is really fucked up, but that there can be hope through a teenager. It's like a coming of age of an intersex teenager that falls in love and her love interest gets murdered. But through all of this and overcoming the horrible death and injustice of what happens to her, she finds that she accepts herself and basically finds the strength to fight for human rights in a country where they're not. So that's my pitch.
Great, great. No, it's a super interesting topic. You have a little more time to get into the specifics of the characters and what happens in the story. So, like, is it a love story and then she gets murdered towards the end, or is it like a mystery that where she's trying to bring the murderer to justice? Can you kind of walk me through like the bigger arcs of how the actual events unfold?
Sure. So the story goes something more like, so the character, whose name is Olivia, it's a very androgynous girl that had struggled with her identity, and basically she wants to be a professional skater, and she meets this girl at school, and she kind of has this love triangle with her best friend, and they all get punished by having summer school together, and through that they develop kind of a relationship. But the group of the boys in this class, basically in Mexico, women get punished for trying to be like boys or for showing any kind of empowerment. So halfway through this, when she's kind of discovering what her identity is, the love interest gets murdered. And this starts a whole discussion about what it means to be a woman in Mexico, the frustrations. Basically, all the characters in the film find it very frustrating at some point, even the men, to be who they really are because of all of this oppression of who you're supposed to be in a very patriarchal society, very misogynistic society. Well, she knows exactly who murdered the love interests, which are her own friends, the kids from the class, which is actually what happened to my friend. So in this case, the guys who murdered my friend were from my class and from my school. So in the end, it's about how they get at the time when this happened to me when I was 16, the adults around us took this as normal and they decided not to do anything about it. So it was like she was blamed for the murder. She was a bad woman, like, you know, like she had it coming because of what she was doing. So in the story, what I want is that through what happens to the daughter and the murder, in this in this case, the adults actually do empower the kids to actually seek for justice. I don't go into the process of seeking for justice because that would be a whole other film, because going through the justice system in Mexico, it's another really complicated hell. But at least she finds the strength within the mother and with the other girls in the group to actually start going for finding justice for what happened to the friend and accepting herself as who she is.
Great. It sounds like a really, really profound story. I think you pitch it really well, and the way you involve your own experiences and then talk about the characters and then the world flows really nicely. I think you can sort of linger a little bit on the emotional journeys of the main characters, maybe like give us their names so that when you refer to them, it's like a little easier to just track through it all. And then also highlight how this is a journey of her finding her voice, and then by the end of it, feeling empowered to do something about what she didn't feel like she had the strength to go up against at the beginning, but it all flows really nicely.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Astrid.
Okay, did we lose somebody? Okay, so now, excuse me, we have Fred and company.
Yes.
Hello.
So I'm Fred. This is Brad.
Hey.
We not only make films together, but we're a couple.
Yay.
So there you go. Which is why we're like quarantined together.
Yes.
Right.
Great.
I mean, you mentioned about talking about yourself and how that informs the films we make. As gay men, we've always, I mean, certainly growing up, felt like the outsider. It's very hard still, although I'm a little older than what the experience is now. But certainly as a gay teenager, you're very much on the outside. Interestingly, we live in Toronto. I mentioned we live in Toronto. On a continent that's dominated by the U.S., Canada often feels like we are on the outside of what's going on in the culture. And I'm Jewish as well. And not so much when I was growing up, but when I went away to college in Chicago, in the Midwest, I certainly felt like an outsider. I say all of that for what you were talking about, to say that the films that we've made and that we want to continue to make always take the point of view of the outsider, of the person who is made to feel uncomfortable by situations that are out of their control, and seeing how these characters make it work, and where they find their space in the world in which they live. So in this script that we're working on, it's our first feature. It's called Hell Hall. It is a horror movie.
It combines sort of, sorry to jump in, it combines sort of two of our fields, because Fred is a trained actor. So that's his wheelhouse is comedy and performance. And I'm like a visual artist. So like I do surrealism and fantasy and horror. So together, like our script is kind of like combined both of our ideas, right? Because we wrote a horror script called Hell Hall. Hell
Hall. The main character, her name is Jess. She's 16 years old. Problems at home. The mother, because of an operation, became addicted to opioids. Jess was not only angry about that, but angry at the father for not doing as much as she wanted her father to do to help the mother. Sadly, though, the mother gets behind the wheel while high, and Jess is in the car. Jess lives, but the mother tragically passes away.
So this is all part of the backstory.
Yes.
Yeah.
While the mother was alive, Jess would steal pills from the mother and sell them at school. As a result, a classmate OD'd, and Jess is now in trouble with the law.
And her father's furious at her. They have a strained relationship. Yeah.
And so Jess is sentenced to a juvenile detention facility. Once there, she discovers strange things going on. She will discover over the course of the movie that the building is possessed by demons, and actually in the basement there is a portal to hell. I know, right? It's a rom-com. But while she's discovering this, she's also discovering this new world in which she has to exist, a world where she doesn't want to be. She doesn't feel like she belongs. She blames her father for doing this. And actually, when she starts hearing strange things and seeing strange things, the one person that she hopes will believe her and help her is her father. And her father, because of many lies Jess has told in the past, her father doesn't believe her. And the lead psychiatrist, they all kind of say the same thing. You're not well, you need to get better, you need to stick to the program. But she knows something is going on. So then it becomes, along with people she meets, other people in the juvenile detention facility, to exactly figure out what's going on and even more importantly, get her father to believe her to the point where her father will actually help her deal with, you know, a portal to hell. Along the way, we kind of play with themes of, we haven't really talked about this all that much, but to give you a frame of reference in a sort of Guillermo del Toro sort of way, where monsters, demons exist, but in a way they are us. And
reflections of monsters within ourselves.
Right.
And the issues that we're dealing with. Yeah.
At one point, in the climax, Jess actually has a battle with the demon version of herself. Sort of the demons. We are the demons. We are, if we're not complete people until we face the demons within ourselves.
Right. The climax involves her becoming full demon, whereas everyone has told her that she is such an awful person, right? The law thinks she's awful. Her father thinks she's awful. She doesn't get any respect, or nobody in the facility believes her, except for one character, the B plot, which is Angela, who is a girl who's very, very similar to Jess, and as Jess has been trying to reach out kindness to her.
They bond over the fact that they both have lost a parent. So that's the bond. It's side note, I know we're kind of all over the place. Sorry for that. But we wanted to make this story, because this story could easily be with a male protagonist and a male friendship, but we specifically wanted a female protagonist and a female friendship.
Yeah.
Number one, because it's not something you see as much as male-dominated things, but also that sense of otherness, whether you're a member of the LGBT community or whether you're a young girl, there's a feeling of helplessness because there's a dominating force telling you, no, you're wrong. And so in the story, in the movie, it's Jess and Angela who find this bond and then are able to eventually use that bond to work together to defeat the demons and the portal to hell.
Great, I love it. I think that your humor comes across in the tone of how you convey the pitch, which is really fun. I just wish, like, in the future, maybe paint a little bit of a picture of what these demons look like and show us a little bit more of the visuals baked into the reveal of the story as well.
Okay.
Like, how does she discover it? How does it happen? What are we looking at here? And spend a little time on that too.
Like he said, he's the visual artist, so there's lots of weird in the script about how these demons look.
Oh, I bet. Yeah, that would be a great time to jump in then, Brad, and talk about, like,
Sure.
When she uncovers that, what does it look like? And again, you don't need to spend too much time on it. Just give me like a little bit of a visual sense for what's gonna.
There are arms coming out of people's heads and things hanging off the walls and eyeballs.
Yeah, so the basis of the mythology that we're working on is the unholy trinity, which is sort of like the mirror version of the Holy Trinity in Catholicism, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. The unholy trinity is me, myself, and I. So the villain of the piece, of the film, the head villain is the architect who built the facility that they're in. His name is Malcolm Ballum, and him and his family belong to a long, proud family of Satanists. But Malcolm dies in the prelude of the film script before we get to Jess, right, in the past. So there is another person who works within the facility who is the main villain, and we're keeping him kind of hidden. But he is, because we were just showing like hands and feet and stuff like that, but he is trying to succeed where Malcolm failed, and he's bringing forth me, myself, and I, and they are illegal drugs that someone is smuggling into the facility, that 3 of the teens that are Jess's friends are becoming possessed through like tainted, possessed drugs. And the three creatures are me, myself, and I. And me is Sandra, who's Jess's roommate, and she is sort of being possessed by mechanical arms and things like that, like coming out of the wall and operating Sandra like puppets. Myself is Cody, which is Sandra's boyfriend, who's sort of like an asshole bully type kind of character.
We had to have some toxic masculinity in it.
He's the toxic masculinity character, yes. And it manifests itself as sort of like this giant boulder that pushes on Cody's back, and it's full of mouths and stuff that talk and bite and things like that, like a giant deformed turtle. And then I is the fourth one, and he is Bryce, who is the sort of gay friend that Jess befriends in the facility. It kind of goes with us, but he is getting appendages coming out of his skin, and like in the forms of eyes and mouths that snap and they twist around people. So Jess is the only one who can see these instances, because the only reason why she can see them is because she had sort of a near-death experience. So she's kind of like got the touch, right? And her fear is that she really is this evil inside that everyone keeps telling her, but she's seeing evil things, so maybe she really is the monster. So eventually in the climax, me, myself, and I converge with Jess to become like a mother demon. And Jess herself, and I'd love to have like the actual actress, I don't want CGI, I would love to put the actress in this great big monstrous costume, green screen, the whole works, and just have it be terrifying on screen.
That's awesome. I love that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, no problem.
And, you know, life lessons will be learned.
Yes, yes.
Always.
Yes.
It's not a movie if we're not learning something.
There is also a little bit of a stretch with her father, because part of the conflict is her trying to get her father to trust her again. So when she does find some evidence of what she's talking about, when she's talking about seeing all these things to her father, he has a little subquest sort of outside in the world where he's discovering the backstory. So that's when a lot of what we've established with the evil architect and his satanic family and all that stuff, that's when that will come connected to Jessica and her father, Richard.
Because that's the point at which Richard, the father, finally acknowledges and realizes that maybe Jess has lied to him in the past, but on this, she's not lying. And he, for the first time, has to believe her and help her.
And he's also involved with the climax. When Jessica goes like full evil, full demon Jess, Richard and Angela are sort of the B and C plots that help save Jess and save the world.
From the demons and the portal to hell.
Exactly.
Great. Love it.
Good.
Okay, before we move on.
Thank you.
Before we move on to Maha, Adria had a question. She wanted to know that if it's taboo to include visuals or anything unconventional in a pitch.
It just seemed like in their pitch, like with these really intricate monsters, that it would be great to have an artist do that. I just didn't know if that was like trying too hard or.
I think generally in in-person pitches, sometimes having visuals does help in terms of like photos to set the mood or things that go along with what you're saying. Generally, art is trickier because if you are pitching it to like an animation studio that maybe wants to bring in their own artist, showing visuals for how the characters look will like marry the execs to that visual, and if they don't like it, then they'll just pass on the whole story, even though you can totally change that later. Execs are just like dumb and sort of short-sighted when it comes to that. So I wouldn't do visuals as art because you can maybe potentially shoot yourself in the foot there. But visuals in and of themselves are very commonly used in pitches, again, like set the mood and tone and stuff. I wouldn't recommend using them in like a Zoom roadmap situation because it can get kind of lost in any potential technical difficulties. But
Okay.
in-person pitches, they're totally a tool at your disposal.
Okay. So you're saying to like use visuals as more of like a mood board. Don't,
Yeah.
if it, like these guys should not be like, and this is what the monster
And this is
looks
what it'll
like.
look like. Yeah, I
Because
wouldn't do
okay.
that.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. Because you want to be able to bring in your own animation team to have the potential to actually deliver themselves rather than marrying your execs to what they're looking at specifically.
Okay.
Thank you, Adria, for
Thank you.
asking that question.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
We have another question real quick before we move on. When we get to the actual events of the story we're pitching, are we pitching it from the main character's perspective, or do we take a more objective standpoint to the story? In other words, lost a spot. Do we tell the event of the story as seen through the main character's eyes, or do we take a more omniscient POV?
It depends on what the script is. Like if every movie or TV show either has a limited perspective or an omniscient perspective. So your pitch should mirror what the viewer of the movie is watching. So if the story is told completely through the perspective of your main character, then you'll do that. But if your story is told more omnisciently, then you'll do it that way.
Okay, cool. Maha, you're up.
Okay, hi. So my feature title is called Hajj to Disney, and it's a story about, it's a drama comedy about this girl who leaves, this woman who goes from Mecca to Florida to be with her boyfriend who left Saudi Arabia suddenly. I had this idea to make this film or to write the story when I came across several articles comparing Hajj, like the pilgrimage, which is like a dream destination for many Muslims around the world, to Disney. And I teach, so when I showed this article to my students, some of them were like, "Oh my God, how dare you? Like, this is a sacred place." But in a way, I felt like the structure of Mecca as a sacred place is very capitalistic, and it's the same kind of feeling I felt when I went to Disney World for the first time. I mean, growing up and watching Disney cartoons when I was, I think in the 90s kind of Disney cartoons, before all the women empowerment thing started changing the cartoons. I felt that it had this kind of message that was kind of parallel to what the conservative society I was growing up in was telling us. Like, you have to find your prince, you have to preserve yourself. And so that's why I wanted to place my protagonist in this conservative world of Mecca. And then because of being in that world, she couldn't date her boyfriend freely. And so she thought, like, once she goes to the States, she would be able to do so. She would be able to hang out. And things just go wrong once she gets there. So I wanted to explore Florida through the eyes of a foreigner. And when I saw American Honey, I kind of liked the perspective of the kids. Like, they're all like, you know, poor, but they're roaming around, seeing all kinds of classes. And I wanted to explore like the concept of class, whether it's like in Saudi Arabia or in the US. And so I have like all these big themes, and I'm still weaving the characters, the specifics of the characters, but I made the guy, the love interest, a stand-up comedian, and I wanted to insert like some kind of instance of comedy. So I don't know if I'm doing a good job. I'm all over the place here with my pitch. So yeah.
I didn't think you were all over the place. I thought you were really weaving together some really interesting ideas. I think if it's a comedy, you might want to make sure you bring that humor into the pitch itself and tell us like some of the interesting contrasts that happen in this, when this character is in this world, and like walk us through the story itself. I think the parallels are super, super interesting, especially because like Disney is sort of viewed as this destination that all of these families across the world need to like scrimp and save no matter how old they are or how poor they are in order to like get there and almost sort of worship. So that's like a very fascinating thing to bring up and share that perspective. But beyond just that theme, the journey of the main character herself and what she runs into when she gets to Florida and like what ensues, I think will also help me find where the humor is in all of this and see, is it like a romantic comedy of her and her boyfriend? Is it an unromantic comedy of them falling apart and her finding herself? Like, what are we building up to through the 3 acts of this?
Okay, there's a part about her, like, you know, she's feeling insecure. Like, I have this age gap between both of them. She's like, she's in her mid-30s, whereas he's in his late 20s. And she kind of feels awkward because she's kind of like feeling, oh, I'm running out of time and I have to, you know, start a family. And she's kind of like obsessing about her biological eggs, because not only does she have to find a man, she also needs to get, like, you know, get married to him so she can have a kid. So there's this theme of like the eggs, because a lot of the times, like, I find that like on Twitter, for example, you find people shaming women for like, oh, your eggs are going to be expired. And I think there was I forgot what her name was, Taylor Swift, I think, was some guy was attacking her and he's like, oh, she reached her 30s, she lost half of her eggs or something. So it kind of like view women as a chicken in a way. And so this whole theme of, like, you know, women expiring and how it's used to shame women, I was planning on playing on that a little bit, because it is kind of like a universal theme. Like, sometimes women tend to like, oh, I'm running out of time, I'm gonna miss the train. But it's something that society conditions you to do, and it's kind of universal, whether you're like in Saudi Arabia or in the US or anywhere in the world. There's always this sense of urgency that, I mean, I guess like for so many women. And so that's kind of like, I wanted to play at that. Like, my cat is.
That is so common. You would be surprised how many cats I've seen. That's great. So what does she do then in order to pursue that and
to go to the US?
Yeah, once she gets there.
So it happens just before, like, women in Saudi Arabia were not allowed to travel without like the permission of their guardian. So and add to that, like, when he was in Saudi Arabia, like, they couldn't meet because there's no public places to meet, and if you're caught dating, then you're in big trouble. And so once he's like fed up, he leaves, and she has to, once he like appears, he's like, oh, why don't you come and we can spend the summer together. And she has to beg her dad for approval so that he can give her the permission. And what else does she do? Like, she's always feeling this awkwardness because, okay, I'm much older than him, but my prospects of having, like, you know, her having a child with him is better than if he was an older man. So there's this whole like sense of like, once she gets to the US, he's always surrounding her with his friends, because the Saudi society, like, it grows like it's very segregated. Like, you have women going to schools and working without like interacting with men. And so sometimes it creates that kind of awkwardness, like the man doesn't know how to like deal with a woman. And so he kind of always surrounds her with his friends. So even though she's with him in the same space in the US, she's still like kind of distant from him. So, and she feels awkward because of, for example, like a lot of the things that they do as mid-20s to late 20s kind of kids, and she's like much older than them. So there's like these instances of awkwardness because of her feeling like what is she doing there with all these kids, you know? So those are some of the instances that she goes through.
That's great. And then does she still end up with him, or does she find a different guy, or does she set off on her own?
So all through the journey, in the US, she's always like distant until the very final, like maybe in the final act, when he finally like, okay, realizes he's been a jerk all this time, and he finally decides to take her to Disney, because she never ends up going to Disney until the end. She catches him, like, as soon as she gets to Florida, actually, she catches him kissing another girl. And, or he's always like, you know, partying and all that stuff. And this is something very common, because a lot of like guys from the Middle East, for example, especially if they're going in conservative societies, as soon as they go to the US, they're like, oh, let's party, there's all these girls. And so he finally tries to make it up, and he takes her to Disney. And then over there, like, I had this scene where she finds him, like, he disappears, and then she finds him kissing a Disney princess. and she thought all of this time she thought she was the princess, but actually there's like the scene where she sees herself and she's actually the witch, or kind of like she realizes that she's older. And I don't know if anyone here saw this film, what is it called, the one that was shot in Disney without it, Escape from Tomorrow.
I forget what it was called, but I know what you're talking about. It's called like Escape from Tomorrow. Yeah.
I like the concept. There was a princess who grew to become the witch. So I felt like how Disney's ages, because the witches are always older, and whenever you're young, you're the princess. And so because she's like approaching her 40s, she's becoming the witch. And so in a way, like she catches him and she slaps him, and she gets banned from Disney. She gets kicked out. And so after all of this journey of dreaming to go to Disney, she actually ends up like, getting kicked out of it. And so, yeah, I think like this is kind of like the loose idea of what I have. Like, I mean, I have a script, but I'm still tweaking it here and there.
Yeah. No, it's really, really interesting. And it sounds like a great exploration of her transformative journey. So yeah, it's really enjoyable. I would be excited to read it once you have like a final version.
Oh, can I send you the script?
Yeah, I think I can ask them for it.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, who's next?
Sorry, I'm running between two different laptops.
Are you timing us?
I am. I'm so sorry. I'm honest about it though, so that should count for something.
It's like in a sitcom where you have to put on a different outfit and then run back in.
No. Wait, let me see what's in the chat box really quickly. Okay, cool. Elizabeth, whenever you're ready.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yes, hello.
Hi. Okay, so the show that I'm pitching is, I'm still developing it, but it's a TV show about two identical twins who don't think that they're identical. They believe that one of them was the imaginary friend of the other one. She's the creation of the other one. And my show is called Imagining Canary. And so a little bit about me. I know some of you know that I'm an identical twin. And part of the creation process for this show, my twin and I are both actors and filmmakers, and we were looking for more substance to some twin roles that we were playing. And so we thought, well, why not create roles as unique and diverse as we are? But we didn't necessarily want to always play twins. So we thought, hey, why not one of us be an imaginary friend? So how I wrote little notes about the order to say things. So Imagining Canary is about this girl named Canary who had a very traumatic event happen in her childhood, and her sister Ellen convinced her that the only way that she could move on from her life without being in a state of, without being in a catatonic state, is that she was imaginary. And since that was the only way that she could move on with her life, the entire town believed it, since that was the only way. So this girl, for the past 10 years of her life, has been going around with everyone ignoring her, pretending that she's imaginary. So this has been her stasis up until the pilot. And in the pilot, so their dad is the sheriff, and they are at this diner, and all of a sudden, their mom, who's been out of the picture, decides to kidnap the girls. And there's gunfights and bang, 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 but the girls and the mom escape. And they're on the road heading to California, and the dad, who they thought they had killed, he sends out his backers, his people. He's in the know, and they end up killing the mom and the girls run away. And Ellen, the one who has more of a head on her shoulders, is like, Canary, this is our chance. Like, we could go to California. We could start a new life free from our dad. We could do whatever we want. So the first season is a coming of age, on the road story of these girls. One of them who believes she's imaginary, the other one who needs this relationship because they both have dealt with a lot of abuse. And so they live in this magical fantasy world in their head in order to cope with their daily life. I think some of the main themes in this is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's not that anybody wanted to do anything evil. It's not that the dad wanted to be mean to them, or that Ellen wanted to be mean to Canary, but that they were just doing the best that they could at that time. So it is a magical realism mystery drama, and the trajectory of the season focuses on the girls' relationship and how it shatters to pieces as Canary starts to wake up to the reality of everything, which is inevitable, and Ellen trying to keep control of their relationship. Because for her, Canary is the safety in their relationship. If anything goes wrong, she tells her a story how everything was fake. And so Ellen's control, she starts to say, we need to go out and steal some groceries, but I'm not going to let you go anywhere anymore. Or eventually it escalates to where she turns the tables on Canary and has a funeral for her imaginary friend. And eventually that blows up and the tables are turned, and then Canary, who now is empowered with being real and wanting to reclaim her life, ends up being the one who takes care of Ellen, who is really struggling with being a lost child on the road and her past ghosts. So yeah, it's a magical realism drama, still toying with how exactly the magical aspects come out. But it is as dark as it is playful. It's a balance. And yeah, I think, did I do most of it?
Yeah, you hit all of the parts of the pitch. I'd love to just delve into a little bit about the sort of overarching hook for the audience. You mentioned it's a mystery drama. What's the mystery? What are we tuning in to find out? And what do you have as being that like series dramatic question that we're trying to find answered?
I think the overall main question is why is Canary imaginary, and how did that happen, and who is at fault? And it ends up that it's really no one's fault. But I think that's the main issue. And there'll be like other little things here and there throughout the season, but that's the main one.
Okay. And what starts to wake her up?
Just the reality of being on the road. She's lived her entire life never leaving this town. Her dad was just such a mean sheriff and controlled everyone and corrupted their entire town. He wouldn't let her face reality or grow up. And but now that she's not in a town where she can steal things and no one will say anything, like no one is pardoning her anymore, and she has to interact with this world that sees these twins and asks them twin questions, and they've never interacted with that before. And just the extremities of being homeless on the road, needing to survive. I think that's what really gets to her. And then her sister needing her help as well.
And how old are they? Sorry.
I didn't say that, but yeah, 17. So on the cusp of adulthood.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'd probably include that in there too. Awesome. Thanks so much, Elizabeth. It was really great hearing about it. All right, who is next?
We have up next, Adria.
Hi.
Hello.
How are you? Thank you so much
How
for
are
doing
you
this.
doing?
I'm okay. I'm okay. So just a little bit about me. I'm an actress and a writer and also a restaurateur. I, up until about, I don't know, like 3 months ago, I owned four restaurants in Los Angeles with my husband, who came to me about 1.5 years ago out of the blue and said he was leaving me. So that's where I'm coming from. My show is called Fetish, and it's a short format series. So the episodes are intended to be all about 5 to 10 minutes. And the main character is Paula. And I actually wrote this with a partner prior to my husband coming to me out of the blue. So it's interesting how life will imitate art. But Paula is down and out, freshly single, yes, newly divorced, a single mother who attends a shopping party and gets abducted on her way home by an S&M dog masked wearing fetishist who puts her in her own trunk, drives her to a restaurant, dresses her in bear-themed lingerie, forces her to read to him from Uncle Tom's Cabin, and then lets her go free unscathed. And when she gets home, Paula processes what happens to her, what's happened to her, and decides to do some research online and discovers this world of fetishism. So she decides to monetize this new skill that she apparently didn't know she had, and enlists the help of her friends who work in the insurance office that she just was recently fired from, that her husband owns. And they set out to make these videos and then also get into the world of fetish fulfillment. So it's sort of like Weeds, only with fetish porn. I think that's my
Great,
pitch.
awesome. So how does this sustain itself over the course of a series? What are some other potential episodes? What's like the series dramatic arc for her? What keeps the audience coming back for more? Tell me a little bit more about, yeah, your vision for the story of the show.
So I feel like the first season is just about this happening to her and her getting to the point where she's going to do this. So at the end of the 6th episode of the first season, she will have, you know, got her little box from Hot Shop Foreplay Erotica and put her outfit on and figured out how to like make a video of herself reading like Crime and Punishment on her iPhone. And then the subsequent seasons will be her sort of finding her way in making these videos. What do people want? And then is, you know, making a website and learning all the technical aspects of how she's going to promote this thing and how does this work in this, you know, modern age. I guess this concept was birthed before the quarantine, so I don't know. That'll be interesting to play with. I mean, and it starts out as a video, you know, a video construct. So perhaps that is what will happen. And then, so that's probably like season 2 is her finding her way. What do people want? How do I give them what they want? How do I find customers? How do I promote this business? And then season 3 would be her just like this, you know, megastar, and how this is gonna, how her success going to interrupt her life, interfere with her. And I didn't talk too much about her her daughter, she's her daughter's Maud. She's tween, and she's, you know, at first trying to keep this from Maud, and then Maud actually has a 13-year-old friend, a guy who's like a website, like a computer total nerd, and helps Paula build her website, and then, you know, then trying to protect Maud from like the weird stuff, but, you know, have this bond with her and not mess up the intimacy with her and her daughter. Then the ultimate reveal, should I tell you the ultimate reveal? Like the big reveal at the very end?
Yeah, definitely. I want to know the ultimate reveal.
What it turns out, and it turns out that the S&M dog masked wearing fetishist who did, didn't kind of isn't the right word, but absolutely roped Paula into this, turns out to be her husband. And
well, that kind of falls into my big question, which was, why didn't this really traumatize her? I mean, she did get kidnapped by like a crazy person in her mind. Did she like deep down know it was him? Has she secretly harbored these desires the whole time, so it was fulfilling a fantasy? Why didn't this freak her out too much to even want to look at an S&M fetish site again?
So perhaps unconsciously she knows it's him. Mm-hmm. But there is a bond between them, that is what doesn't freak her out and what piques her interest. He's actually super sweet to her and polite and kind and wants to make sure she's comfortable, but also like has abducted her. So there's something also about it that, you know, the suburban, clamped down, buttoned up woman is sort of, not sort of, I keep using kind of and sort of, she's turned on by it. She's excited by it. She likes it. She's in this outfit, but she's like, I like this. And I don't like the idea of like, I'm not trying to compare this to, you know, a woman being raped, or, you know, I don't want to romanticize it like that. So it's funny and it's sweet, and she's wearing fur, so it's sort of like stuffed animalish. But yes, I want to be really careful not to romanticize like abduction and assault.
What's the final visual at the end of the first episode? Like, how do you end it?
She is in a red sequined bikini with fringe, standing in her suburban, well-appointed bedroom, like from, you know, Target, and she's got her iPhone, and she's reading Crime and Punishment to us, and that's the final visual.
What's the quote from Crime and Punishment?
I could read it to you if you want. Let's see.
Yeah, I do. I'm
okay.
Curious. Because is it symbolic?
Yeah.
Like, does it launch your theme of the show?
Yes, it's about, I mean, I wish I had it sort of.
No, if you have to like search for it, don't worry about it. You could also summarize.
It's just about like, there's just a little room, you know, and you know, like maybe that's all life is. You know, we romanticize what life is, and but maybe it's just a little dingy room and spiders, and here, hold on, I'm gonna find it for you. It's right here. Okay, we're always thinking of eternity and as an idea that cannot be understood, something immense, and that's actually going to be the title of the episode, something immense. But why must it be? What if instead all this you suddenly find just a little room there, something like a village bathhouse, grimy and spiders in every corner, and that's all eternity is. Times, you know, I can't help feeling that that's what it is.
I love that. Thanks, Adria. What a fun story. I worry a little bit that it's super close to Bonded on Netflix, which is also like short form, but it's about young people.
Yeah, people have told me about that. I gotta watch that.
Yeah, check it out. Because I mean, there can be more than one S&M comedy, like short form comedies. You just need to like highlight why yours is different, which I think you did. So that's just a thing to like keep an eye out for.
Okay.
But thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Who is next?
Fred had a question really quickly before we move on.
Okay.
He wanted to know, oh, go ahead. Okay. He wanted to know, how do we get into a situation where we are actually using our scripts to get production money?
Oh man, that is a very complicated question with no real answer. So it all just goes into the process of getting out there, meeting people, getting representation. They get you into rooms, or you meet people at an event and they invite you to come into their company and pitch later, or you send in a script via query and they offer you to come in and talk more about the project, or through something like Roadmap, they send out your pitch and get you meeting producers. It's like a long road to be actually pitching to get production money. At the outset, you're more pitching to get like other producers involved, or talent attached, or another writer attached, or like maybe you pitch it to a pod to see if like you can get a showrunner who has an overall deal to bring it in on their slate. There's a lot of different ways to get into these rooms, and there's no straight answer. I'm very sorry.
That's what I thought, but I figured I'd ask.
Yes, I appreciate it. But when you do, you will be ready.
Okay, did anybody else who didn't pitch already want to volunteer to pitch? Or does anybody else have any questions for Audrey?
I do.
Okay.
Yes, I can do another question.
Can you talk a little bit about the short format situation with Quibi, and like how do you have you been involved in deals for that, and what's the marketplace and situation for that?
None of my clients have sold anything to Quibi yet, but my company has. So I know, like, I don't know the deal specifics, but generally what they're looking for is something to be pitched as a feature script that can be then broken down into like 10-minute episodes. So they would really want either a spec feature or an idea for a feature, and like you really know where they all go, so they can have 90 minutes of content, preferably set in like one area. And they really want stuff that's packaged up with talent and like big names as well. So something like this wouldn't be easy to bring in to Quibi without attachments, but if you can get like a name actress in doing that, that might be a good way to sweeten the deal for them. There's other short form buyers as well, in terms of stuff like Snapchat or YouTube, or like even Netflix is buying short form. And again, the landscape might totally change regarding that as a result of the current quarantine situation. So for this, I think it would be helpful to, if like Quibi is your real goal here, like have a feature version of this. But if you're just keeping it in mind in terms of short form buyers, I would maybe not have them at the top of your list.
Okay. I've actually shot it all, and it's almost all produced.
Oh wow, that might actually be easy to get into them then.
It doesn't, and I'm not partial to Quibi. In fact, I kind of felt like in watching what little bit I've seen, it does seem sort of star fuckery. So, and this was.
However,
I mean that in the very best way.
No, you don't have to. It's like none of my friends or family work at Quibi. We can totally shit talk them. Oh wait, this is being recorded. I love Quibi. Having it all shot and mostly produced is going to be a huge advantage depending on how long our current pandemic lasts. And I know that a lot of people are starting to think about like, oh, how can we open up production and keep things sanitary, which I think is a terrible idea. So we'll have to see what happens in this industry in the next few months, but it's definitely possible. Like in a few months, everyone will be so starved for content that they'll be like, do you have shot footage? Let's figure out a way to re-edit it, and you'll be able to get in there with this as an easier pitch. So I don't wish for the world to get worse, but if it does, you have an opportunity here.
Okay. Do you have any ideas about how to?
It feels a little old for something like Snapchat. But yeah, we'll just have to see like where the mandates go, and those are always shifting.
Okay. Cool. Thank you so much.
I have a follow-up about Quibi.
Yeah.
If anybody wanted to know, from my rep, they said that for the content they're looking for is, because I think the episodes are 10 or 12 minutes, that at the end of each episode it needs to be like a climax. So if you are writing a feature, just make sure like every 10 to 12 minutes there's a climax. So it's like the end of an episode, FYI.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Okay, so anybody else? Questions, comments? Want to pitch if you didn't? No? Sure?
It's not scary. Or I mean, it's scary, but like, it's worth it. It's worth the fear.
It is terrifying, but it is. I should probably. It is worth it.
And that's how you get better, by practicing.
Yes, and like,
so if you do have a pitch coming up, I also recommend like calling your friends and family, only if they're supportive, but like calling your friends and family and pitching it to them, and like pitching it to anyone who will listen, and like pitching it to your roommates, and that way you can get a really good rhythm going and like feel confident in it, and then it can feel conversational and you can get feedback from them. So practicing your pitch on whoever will listen is a great way to get better.
And you can always email one of us at Roadmap and say, hey, can I practice my pitch on you? And we'll be like, sure, why not? And then we'll listen to it and give you whatever notes we can to help you get better. And I do that because you're already great. Everybody
can always get better.
True. Excuse me, you all did a great job who pitched. Great questions. Since nobody else is volunteering to pitch or seemingly has any other questions, Audrey, if you don't have anything else, I think we can wrap it up. Carla Martini.
Audrey, you were so helpful. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I am glad. I'm gonna go call my grandma now for Mother's Day.
Oh, that's so sweet. Okay, well, everybody, enjoy the rest of your Sunday.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye all. Thank you so much for your time. Take care.